Welcome and good evening. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Self-Realization Fellowship and Yogoda Satsanga Society of India, I'd like to welcome all of you on this very blessed and sacred occasion. We've gathered together for a special memorial service in honor of the passing of our beloved sanghamata and president, Sri Mrinalini Mata, on August 3rd. I'd like to add, when I say I welcome all of you, it's more than just our beloved gurus, disciples, and friends who've gathered here in the California Ballroom. We also have devotees and friends in the Pasadena room downstairs here in the Bonaventure Hotel in Los Angeles. But also the program, the ceremony is being live streamed and is available worldwide. So welcome to all of you for joining us this evening, wherever you might be. I know we're all together in spirit, in that divine love that our blessed Guru has brought into our lives, the joy and the wisdom, the guidance, the protection that are so much a part of our lives, that binds us all together as one worldwide spiritual family. So welcome. Let us begin by invoking the presence of the living God, the ever-present God, and our blessed Gurus. Let's close our eyes. Concentrate at the heart center. Awaken the deepest love of your heart, your devotion. Concentrate at the spiritual eye, point between the eyebrows. As we pray, invoke the divine presence of God and Gurus. Heavenly Father, Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Shri Yukteswar, and our blessed Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, we bow to you all. Lift us from darkness, ignorance, and uncertainty, into the clear light of thy divine presence. Ignite our earthliness with the flame of infinity. Inflame our hearts with thy love. Inflame our souls with thine ever new joy. Heavenly Father, we are gathered here to honor the heavenly ascension of our beloved Sri Mrinalini Mata, who has gone ahead of us, and to express our gratitude for the love and kindness that she manifested while with us. Though she leaves a void, and we will miss her, yet we are happy that she is enshrined in our hearts. We offer her our love and everlasting goodwill. Oh. Shanti. Peace. Amen. I'd now like to ask Brother Achalananda to begin our ceremony this evening.
We are gathered here together tonight in a time that has both happiness and some pain and sorrow with it. The happiness is our beloved sanghamata. The sadness is ours for a while as we learn to carry on without her loving presence with us. But her spirit has now risen into that place where we don't have to pack around this heavy physical body, and is a place of joy and great happiness, and with the beloved gurus waiting to meet her for all the service that she has rendered to all. We know that she is now risen. The sacred words of the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita help us to better understand this. Never the Spirit was born. The Spirit shall cease to be never. Never was time it was not. End and beginning are dreams. Birthless and changeless remaineth the Spirit forever. Death hath not touched it at all, dead though the house of it seems. I say to thee, weapons reach not the life. Flame burns it not. Waters cannot o'erwhelm, nor dry winds wither it. Unentered, impenetrable, unassailed, unharmed, untouched, immortal, all arriving, stable, sure, invisible, ineffable by word and thought, uncompassed, ever all itself. Thus is the soul declared. The end of birth is death. The end of death is birth. This is ordained. The 23rd Psalm tells us something of what our beloved sanghamata is now enjoying in that beautiful astral world. And we have to remember that this 23rd Psalm was written by one who had been a shepherd in his early days, and he used those words in expressing this great psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Now that's an interesting saying, because you see, sheep will not drink from moving water. So the shepherd has to lead them to still waters and green pastures to preserve them. And so he's making that thing of speaking of how God is looking after us. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Now again, we have to go back to see what was he talking about there. The shepherd kept a rod and a staff. The staff was a crook on the end of it, by which they could reach down if one of the sheep fell down and pull it back to safety. The rod was to fight off the wolves, to beat, in other words, we can say, to get rid of delusion. So God is looking after us in that same manner. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Those enemies I'm sure he was talking about here are those enemies of all human beings: anger, fear, lust. These are the enemies we all have to overcome. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Where do we go when we go here? We go to that astral world. Then gradually we learn to go to the causal world and then go back to God. You know, some people think when they leave they're going to go into heaven, and that's going to be the end of it. But what did Christ say? Heaven and earth shall pass away. Creation passes away, so where do you go then? You go to the eternal presence of God. That's where we go. So we need not have any fears for our dear one. And now we're going to have a chant, and it will be followed by a short meditation.
We would now like to ask Sister Priya to come forward and share testimonials and tributes received from devotees and friends collected from around the world.
We've been receiving some very beautiful tributes, and as Brother said, want to share a few of them with you. This one is from the leader of an Indian association in the San Diego area. On my return yesterday, I learned of Mrinalini Mataji joining Guru Deva and Daya Mataji. A new star is born, and added a new glow to the spiritual sky. Now they are visible to millions of people, helping us to follow in their footsteps, to serve humankind in multiple ways, creating a glorious future in a peaceful world. He continues, I had the privilege of receiving Mrinalini Mataji's blessings in her own hand. This will be preserved for posterity. I will do everything to be worthy of her blessings. I think we all feel that way. The first time I ever saw Mrinalini Mata, I had an overwhelming impression that is still with me. It could have been yesterday, that it was at the Hollywood India Hall, and it was the lay disciple event. We were expecting Sri Daya Mata, but she asked Mrinalini Mata to come in her place. And this being came out on the stage of India Hall. And all I could think was, but one like that never, hardly ever, so rarely comes as far down as this. She just didn't belong on this plane. And after I entered the ashram, it was my privilege to know her for many years. And I never saw her when she came down from that state. And I believe that now she is with, obviously, as we all do, with Guruji, with Daya Mata and the others, and will help us and humankind in multiple ways. We can be positive about the future. We have celestial help. A devotee from Palos Verdes, California wrote, my heart is with you as we mourn the physical loss of our sweet sister, Sri Mrinalini Mata. I had the blessing to be in her presence for the last several years at Convocation, and this experience filled me with such joy and laughter, and also brought me to tears in Spirit's presence. I am in deepest gratitude for the glimpses of her divine sweet presence. And a devotee from Australia wrote, it is with tears that I receive the news of my beloved Mrinalini Mata's passing. I know it is with great joy that Master and the Great Ones receive her, but I had been composing another letter to her in my mind. She gave me my initiation into Kriya back in 1965. And I still treasure a little heart-shaped box she gave me in which I keep my Kriya petals. I shall miss her dreadfully, and my heartfelt sympathy goes out to all of those who were in close contact with her angelic presence. And again from this country, when I realized our dear president had passed just days before the beginning of Convocation, my first thought was, What a motherly time to go, when many of us will be tuning in from near and far to the blessings of convocation. It's just like such a humble soul to be focused on the benefits of others, even during her great transition. What a blessing she has been and will be in her great devotion to Master. And from New Jersey, I remember our beloved Mrinalini Mata with deep love and gratitude for her blessed presence, wonderful example of true discipleship, and abiding love for God, gurus, and her spiritual family. Her beautiful writings and talks inspire me along this path of self-realization. I extend my prayers, love, and appreciation for all she has done to further Guruji's teachings and guide us toward our goal of cosmic consciousness. Another devotee wrote, "She was such a beautiful person, always kind and natural. One sensed that there was utterly no ego, no judgment in her at all. And her own relationship with Master was so touching and endearing. It's impossible to list all she did for Master's work, but she prepared his teachings and family for this new era. She was modern as well as wise. We all loved her deeply and will miss her earthly presence." Then we heard from Brazil. Inspired by Gurudev's words to put God first, we all know how a certain phrase will strike like lightning and inspire us forever. It was so when we were watching the DVD In His Presence with Sri Mrinalini Mataji. In one passage, she was describing an experience she had. She said to Guruji, "I am willing to die for your work." And the response she felt was, "To die for my work is easy. Are you willing to live for my work?" You couldn't top Master, you see. She had the sweetness to reply to one of our letters, wishing her a happy Mother's Day. We had that letter framed and posted it on a wall to remind us of how sweet a mother can be, even though she might be very busy. But those words, "Are you willing to live for my work?" are engraved in our hearts, in our souls forever. Mataji, receive the gratitude of our hearts. In some of these comments, you can see how the experience of Mrinalini Mata, her presence, her influence, her writings, the films, lift people to a higher consciousness. They're talking about higher, something they're experiencing, aren't they? They're in a higher state of consciousness through these contacts with her. This was from an American devotee, but written after an earlier convocation when Mrinalini Mata had spoken. "Dear sweet Mrinalini Mata, when you came to the convocation last year, we hung on every word. We laughed with joy at your effortless sense of humor, and we tried our best to follow you into the vast reaches of your mind and heart. That journey left us so uplifted, so inspired, so filled with courage to return to our earthly homes, ready to face the challenges that await us as we move ever closer to our home in God. Thank you, dear Mrinalini Mata, for your steadfast life following our Guru. Your life is a greater inspiration to us than we could ever explain. We heard from a family in Jharkhand, India. For us, Mataji was a beacon of kindness and spiritual purity. As seekers, we found solace and comfort in the fold of self-realization under the guidance of Mataji. I recall receiving a beautiful welcome letter from her, the likes of which I had never seen before. And we had another message from Bangladesh. Dear friends, I received with a mixture of sadness and joy, didn't we all, the news of Sri Mrinalini Mata's passing. She's in a better place with God, Guru, our saints and devotees who preceded her. I offered my meditation today to her, asking for her protection and love. Coming down here, can't help remembering how Mrinalini Mata loved convocation. She rarely was able to come, but we would say goodbye to her. Perhaps she would be stuck in her office, as she always was. If it wasn't the lessons, it was the magazine, or the Rubaiyat, or the Gita, the Second Coming, articles by Master, the responsibilities of being vice president. So she could hardly ever come, but I can still remember her eyes. On one occasion, she said to me, I would so love to be coming down there with you. I would love to be with them all. So I think there will be an unseen presence, not only at this convocation, but in every succeeding convocation. Mrinalini Mata had such love for every one of Master's devotees. I experienced that personally in my life, in my years at Mount Washington. But although you knew that she loved you, she made you feel she would do anything to help you spiritually. It wasn't exclusive. You knew that that same love was there for everybody, absolutely everybody. She loved all in that way. She still does, she always will. So, beloved Mrinalini Ma, all our love to you. Jai Guru.
I'd like to share that these services that we perform in Self-Realization and Yogoda Satsanga Society of India were given to us by Guruji himself. And the readings that you're hearing this evening are Guruji's words. They're inspired, they come from his God realization, and they carry the blessing of that holy vibration. These words, written by Guruji, tell of a dying youth who was informed by his doctors that he would soon pass. And friends and family around him were expressing great sorrow, but he expressed great joy because he knew he would soon be liberated. So I'd like to share these words with you. If you like, close your eyes, focus on our beloved Guru's divine presence, and feel his inspiration, his blessing, his wisdom behind these blessed words. My beloved God will soon open the prison gates of my life and embrace me in his infinite arms. The balloon of earthly life will break, and the imprisoned breath of life will cross the mortal shore and reach his immaculate kingdom of joyous dreams, where no nightmares of illness will dare to cross the threshold of my peace. My nightmare of desires has ceased. My dreams of grief are broken. The light of laughter has awakened. My light has plunged into the divine light and is playing over the splendors of eternity. The shadows of fanciful fears have slipped away, and the infinite light has spread over the dark nooks of my soul. My entering of the bliss kingdom of God must be attended only with the celebration of laughter and songs. No timidity of dark sorrow will be allowed to join my festivity. O dear ones, rejoice in my joy on the eve of my freedom from the mortal prison. I am free. I shall soon be gone on my infinite way. No music is sweeter than the song I shall sing every moment. My divine beloved comes in the dazzling chariot of death to take me away to the kingdom of deathlessness, to the palace of bliss dreams. We now would like to ask Swami Ishwarananda, one of our Yogoda Satsanga Society monastics, to say a few words on behalf of Guruji's work in India.
Dear Guru Bhais and Guru Bahens, all of you, not only those who are sitting here, but who are participating in this sacred ceremony from all over the world. On behalf of the Board of Directors, all the monastics, and the many thousands of devotees of Yogoda Satsang Society of India, I offer my deepest reverence and heartfelt gratitude to our beloved Mrinalini Mata ji on this sacred occasion when we are celebrating her holy life that was so completely dedicated to God and her Guru. As you all know, YSS is celebrating the glorious completion of 100 years of its existence. And right from the beginning of this year, we have been doing many programs, many functions to celebrate this centenary. Guruji started this organization as a small school in a very small village in West Bengal 100 years ago in 1917 with just 7 students. And within a year, in 1918, that school was shifted from that small village to Ranchi, to the location where we have our ashram now in Ranchi. And Guruji stayed there just for 2 years, not more. And by August 1920, he had already departed from the shores of India to come to America. And but for a few months in 1935-36, when he again visited India to revive YSS and to start his lesson series, the weekly lesson series, most of the time he was here in America. So we can say that Guruji barely had time to do anything more than just plant the seeds of his future organization. If you look at history, we find that a spiritual organization grows most rapidly during the lifetime of the spiritual founder. And when that spiritual figure departs, that spiritual personality departs, it starts dwindling. But this did not happen with YSS. It had enough resilience in it to sustain itself even in the absence of Guruji's physical presence. And it grew slowly at first, but with time, it grew with increasing speed. And today, after 100 years, it continues to grow and thrive. Today, there are thousands of dedicated devotees across the length and breadth of India who have been blessed and transformed by the teachings, by these divine teachings of our Guru. And our Guru, who was not so well known in the 1950s and 60s, is today counted among the greatest of saints born in India. And over the years, that small school that was started by Guruji has become a nationwide organization with several hundred meditation centers, thousands of devotees, and is now recognized as a very reputed spiritual organization. So much so that on March 7th this year, the Prime Minister of India marked this event by issuing a special stamp, a commemorative stamp, which many of you have seen displayed in the book room here. And the Prime Minister, in his address on that occasion, he said, YSS is unique, and he meant YSS SRF. It is unique because it has remained faithful to the teachings of the Guru without dilution or diversion. High praise indeed. And this growth, if you look at it historically, it is a miracle because it happened even when the Guru's physical presence was not there. But it was not a miracle that was achieved lightly. It required the blood and tears. Yes, the blood and tears of several of Guruji's direct disciples who, by their spiritual presence, by their spiritual power, and their 100% attunement with the Guru's consciousness, were able to stabilize the shaking foundations of YSS and again rebuild that organization as per the wishes of the Guru. As we all know, first among them was our third president, Sri Daya Mataji, who made prolonged visits to India between 1958 and 1972. Her contribution cannot be measured or quantified. And the next was our beloved Mrinalini Mataji, whose life we are celebrating today. She accompanied Dayamataji on many of her India visits and continued to bless India with her visits until 1982, nearly 10 years after Dayamataji's last visit to India. So she did contribute a lot to the growth of this work in India. No doubt, many other great souls rallied around these two saintly souls to make YSS what it is today. But there is no denying that the momentum and direction to the growth of this work in India was provided by these two souls. When one of the veteran devotees shared this with me, he said when Mrinalini Mataji first visited India with Dayamataji, Dayamataji introduced Mrinalini Mataji as Choti Ma. In Hindi, that means little mother. Since then, devotees in India would call Dayamataji as Ma and Mrinalini Mataji as Choti Ma. So to all of those devotees who knew them well, she is Choti Ma. This Choti Ma, our Mrinalini Mataji, exemplified all the qualities of a perfect disciple, as we all know. Not only was she herself 1000% loyal to the Guru and his teachings, but through her talks and through her life example, she had this power to evoke that same zeal in a new disciple. You know, when we monastics join the ashram, we go through a postulant training program. And one of the elements of that program is a Friday night tape class, when we get the opportunity to listen to the class given by Mrinalini Mataji to the postulants. It is a taped class. And for most of us, these tapes are the first introduction to the wisdom of Mrinalini Mataji. And whatever the topic may be, whether it is guru-disciple relationship or whatever it is, her explanations are so lucid and clear, and there is so much force in her words that at the end of the class, all of us would be on fire to implement all the direction that she gave in that class. So it was a cyclic phenomenon. From Monday through Friday, our consciousness would get a little restless. Our focus would shift slightly away from God and Guru. But come Friday night, after hearing that tape, we would again be on fire to become the perfect disciple. And one of the monks put it in this way. He called it the Friday night fever. We all know that though Mrinalini Mataji contributed in innumerable ways to the growth of this work, her greatest contribution is to Guruji's writings and talks. It was indeed a Himalayan task and could have been accomplished by no other than her. And she made many sacrifices. I remember when I first met Mrinalini Mataji in 2002, I asked her, I said, Ma, devotees in India would love to have your darshan again. Wouldn't you want to go to India? Is there no possibility that you can go to India and see how much the work has grown since you have last been there? So she looked at me and very kindly, with a sweet smile, she said, Dear, I wish I could go. There's nothing more I would like to do. But Guruji has given me this task of bringing out his books. Then she pointed to several books that were kept next to her, the Bhagavad Gita, Guruji's talks, all these books were there. She pointed to the books and she said, "These are my India visits." If I had gone to India every year, we couldn't have published these books. And I realized that Mrinalini Mataji was looking far ahead. Rather than benefiting just a few devotees by visiting India, she was creating this treasure for all the future generations to come. And through these teachings, Mrinalini Mataji has immortalized Guruji. Because now, his teachings are the Guru. One devotee shared his experience. He was traveling in a bus in India, and he was in the habit of reading some book, some literature of Guruji while traveling in the bus. And on that particular day, he was reading from Man's Eternal Quest. And he said that he doesn't remember what he was reading, but all of a sudden, his heart filled with immeasurable love of God. And it felt as if the heart is going to explode with that love. And he had never felt that kind of love before. And it lasted for a long time. Guruji's presence. And he said that along with this great blessing, he also felt a deep feeling of gratitude. Gratitude for the organization, gratitude for all those who worked to make this book available to people like him. So unconsciously, unknowingly, he was expressing his gratitude to none other than Mrinalini Mataji, who contributed the most in preserving the wisdom of Guruji for posterity. Mrinalini Mataji was always very keenly interested in the work, in the various activities done by YSS, educational activities, service activities, meditational activities. And in 2011, when I met her, she had the YSS magazine, a copy of YSS magazine in her hand. And when I went to greet her, she pointed to that magazine and she said, "Do you know what I read? The very first thing that I read when I get this magazine? The YSS news and activities." And she said, "I read every word of it. It gives me such a thrill to read about all the wonderful work you do in India. How proud Guruji would have been to see all of this." And she continued. She said, in his lifetime, Guruji had very few devoted souls who could carry on the work the way he wanted it. But today, looking at the growth of YSS, he would have been proud of all of you. And she meant all the devotees in India. These words of praise mean a lot to all of us who work in India, who serve in India, and they will always inspire us to do more and better. I would now like to end with these words addressed to our beloved Mrinalini Mataji. Very dear and beloved Mrinalini Ma, all of us in Guruji's motherland, his beloved India, are deeply grateful to Divine Mother for having given us a perfect disciple such as you, whose entire life has been a shining example of utter humility, wisdom, dedication, and complete loyalty to God and his organization. Like the proverbial lotus of wisdom, after which Gurudev named you, your life manifested the full blossoming of divine wisdom, redolent with the fragrance of heavenly peace and bliss. For being such a flawless channel of the Guru's teachings, for sharing your wisdom through your talks and writings, and for your deep love for India and YSS, we offer our heartfelt gratitude and thanks at your lotus feet. Our deepest prayers go with you, Mrinalini Ma, as you enter those highest realms where you will once again meet our beloved Gurudev with a heart filled with peace, bliss, and ever-new joy. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I now invite Brother Chidananda to come and speak.
I've been asked to say a few words about the life and contribution to Gorgey's worldwide work, contributed these many years by our beloved Mrinalini Ma. And I have to tell you, I feel like I'm stepping out on thin ice here, because as you've heard from various of our brothers and sisters here, Mrinalini Mata, one of her absolute foremost qualities was an utter self-effacement, an utter humility. And the last thing that she would want was for any of us to get up and draw attention to her accomplishments or any kind of praise that was so foreign to her being in that great humility. And I remember when one of her great works, of course, was the completion in publication of our Guru's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and that was in 1995. And after it was printed and came back to and was able to be distributed, she was meeting with the monastics, and she confided this. She said, "I had just one wish when I was working on the Gita. There was one thought, one desire that followed me throughout that whole process, and that was that my part would be done completely anonymously." And then she said, of course, there's only one small problem with that desire, because the entirety of the Gita is you have to give up every desire. So, and in fact, it was our beloved Sri Dayamata who insisted that the role played in this work, not only by Mrinalini Mata, but by her predecessor, Taramata, be acknowledged in the book. And the same when Gorgey's commentaries on the Gospels came out a few years later, the Second Coming of Christ. When we were finalizing that book and getting ready to print it, I recall speaking to Ma Dayamata and telling her that Mrinalini Ma was very, very reluctant to have any acknowledgement of her work on it. And then Ma so sweetly said, "I know, dear, she's so humble. But you just write up something that conveys what she's done for Master's work and send it to me. I'll take care of her." So, and stepping out here with a few stories tonight, I am very much counting on Dayamata's continuing protection. Just a few biographical facts. Mrinalini Mata was born on May 8th, 1931, in Wichita, Kansas. She was known in her pre-monastic life as Myrna Brown, and she grew up mostly in the San Diego area in Southern California. And of course, as I think most of you know, who have heard the stories of her experiences with Gorgey, and especially meeting him and her early years in the ashram, she met him at the SRF Temple in San Diego in 1945. She was 14 years old. And such an epic of spirituality unfolded over those next years of her life, as has been mentioned, as really the exemplar of ideal discipleship. She said that from that very first time, that very first moment that she walked into the temple, instantly there was that sense that her life had transformed, that she said, I couldn't have put it into words at that time, but what I felt coming from him, the love, the consciousness, the transformation, she said the connection with him for my life was formed in that instant. Now, Mrinalini Mata's whole family became followers of Gorgey, followers of the Master. Her mother was named Vera Brown, later known by her monastic name of Mira Mata, who was one of Gorgey's very trusted, very close, the kind of disciple that he knew he could rely on. Mira Mata was also very much beloved to many, many of the lay members who sort of grew up spiritually. In fact, Mrinalini Mata once confided, she said, there's a long waiting list of devotees who want to be reborn as one of Mira Mata's children. So I'm sure some of them in the room here today. Take a number. Her father was William Wesley Brown, also very much loved and revered Master, even though he never became a formal SRF follower. And Mrinalini Mata's older sister and younger brother also lived in the ashram for a number of years before going on to householder life later in their lives. That whole family really became part of that close circle of disciples around Master following that meeting at the San Diego Temple. You know how historians in the West use these designations to mark history. There's BC and AD, in other words, the period of history before the birth of Christ and after the birth of Christ. Well, in the same way, the arrival of Mrinalini Mata and her family, her brothers and sisters into the ashram, it made such a stir, really, an impetus of new life, you might say, into the ashram. Gorgey used to humorously say that there were two eras in the SRF work, BB and AB, meaning before Browns and after Browns. Now, of course, Mrinalini Mata will always be remembered as one of those preeminent, close disciples around Gorgey that from the very first day he began to mold and to train because he saw that in her, as within a few others, was the future of the SRF YSS work after he would no longer be in the body. She became the president, fourth president of SRF YSS in 2011, served with, of course, with great distinction and accomplishment as the editor-in-chief of SRF YSS publications for many, many decades, and bringing out this incredible treasure trove of Master's teachings for humanity. Just a couple of stories about that. She was only 15 when she entered the Encinitas Hermitage, the SRF ashram, and this gives a little glimpse as to her innate character. She said, she just loved it in the beginning when her duties consisted of cooking and cleaning and scrubbing the floors and preparing the meals for the other ashram residents. And she said, because I could keep my mind so free. And she said, just to be able to go about those duties, just inwardly singing to Divine Mother, she said it was just heavenly. But then one day, Master called her and said, no more cleaning, no more cooking. I want you to concentrate on your school studies, principally English and writing. And he said, I want you to read Shakespeare and Emerson and all of these great writers. She said, I thought it was so strange. She said, the last thing I would ever want to do, the last thing I ever thought of myself was being literary or having anything to do with that kind of work. But that Master knew what he was doing. And then she said, well, I followed his wishes. I let the other disciples carry on those duties, and I really applied myself to reading and studying and my English work. But she said, I still, in my free time, I still love to scrub those floors. And she said, that was my hobby. And she would be there at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning in the kitchen, scrubbing the kitchen floor. And dear Sister Gyanamata, that elderly saintly disciple who lived in the hermitage, she often would be rising around that time to begin her morning meditation. And she would walk in, and there was Mrinalini Mata on the floor, scrubbing with the soap and water. And Mrinalini Mata related to us, she said that Gyanamata, she said, she used to call me Little Cupcake. She would come in and say, "Cupcake, what are you doing on your hands and knees? Why do you think man invented the mop?" And Mrinalini Mata would say, "But sister, I just can't get it clean with the mop. It doesn't shine as much. It doesn't feel as perfect as if I do it with a brush on my hands and knees." You know, that same attitude, it was so revealing, that carried over into her many, many decades of work with the precious gems of thought, gems of inspiration that Gorgey gave to her to polish and to shine and bring out in their final setting for all of us to be guided and inspired by. And she talked about that. She talked about that assignment. She said, "One day, Master called me into his room where he was sitting with a big pile of folders that had come to him from the office at Mount Washington. And he said, these are folders of letters from students of the SRF lessons." And he had put them into folders, and he was going through them and making notes of different points that had to be addressed in the lessons to get them into their final form. And she said he then handed her this big pile of folders and said, "This is now your work." Now, she then backtracked and she said, ever since she first came into the ashram, Gorgey was training her in lots of different ways for this ability to tune in with his thoughts, tune in with his writings, with his words. And she said the common thing that he repeated to her again and again was, "Get my thoughts, get my thoughts, understand what I mean." In other words, that intuitive attunement beyond just the literal meaning. So on that occasion, she said, when he handed her the assignment for working on the lessons, he went on to say, "I have brought the truth, but it is not my job to organize it and edit it." And he went on and he said, "I am giving diamonds in the rough, and God sent me Laurie to polish them." Laurie, of course, meaning Taramata, his editor at the time, who Gorgey later transferred that responsibility to Mrinalini Mata after the passing of Taramata. But she said, Master at that time already knew that his time on earth was getting very short, and there was just the sense of urgency that he had so much he wanted to bring out, so much he wanted to leave as his legacy for posterity. So he said to her, "It is not my job to edit. I don't have the time. The lessons is your work. I want you to revise the lessons and write advanced studies, taking from my lectures and writings." And he said to her, "The lessons will be your life's work." And we spoke a little bit last night in conveying the news of how she worked into the very last days of her life to fulfill that assignment, and that we look forward with great joy in the coming year to sharing the product of her work, that long, long labor of love, labor of attunement with the lessons. But remember, she was still in high school when he assigned this to her. You know, those of us who have had the blessing of seeing her, or attending a satsang with her, or even listening to her talks or watching her videos, and I don't know about you, but from just as Sister Priya was saying, but from the first time that I ever laid eyes on her, you just had a sense that this is a divine being in earthly form. And yet, in those early years, she often told us, she said she was so shy. She was such a small little girl, so timid. But one of the first things that Master did was to train her, to get that out of her. And so I want to share some of this because it gives a wonderful glimpse of that relationship that the Guru has with the disciples. And she said, first of all, he said, Master used to tell the devotees, "For years I have prayed to have a quiet disciple." And then he said, and now I have one, and I don't know what to do with her. She's too quiet. So he set about trying to get her over that. And he would say to her, he said, answer me, talk to me, express yourself. And she said, the more he would say that, the more I would just tense up, and I couldn't utter a word. And she said, this would go, then Master would say, all right, you're not going to talk to me? I'm not going to talk to you. And this she said, went on not just for a few hours or sometimes for 2 or 3 days. Master wouldn't talk to her. And she said, we would write notes. And she said, I could express myself if I put it down on a little note paper. And she went on and said, see the infinite patience of the Guru. Do we realize how much patience, how much even our slight flaws or our very serious flaws, that he gives such time and patience to help us overcome. It's so tremendous. And so here's one of the notes that Gorgey wrote to her during that period. He said, I was very happy to hear from you. Your letters are cogent and seem to cover the wide range of my queries. If repeatedly dynamited, your thoughts can explode or splinter into fragments of speech, or snatches of intelligible sentences which I can garner together and systematize into a meaning. This is not an accusation, but the consequences of the prize gift of your habitual silence. Well, anyway, you are doing better, for sometimes you volcano-like voluntarily erupt into informative words. Isn't that sweet? Mrinalini Mata often loved to share with us how Gorgey just delighted in English words. And she said it was really remarkable for someone who wasn't born to the language, but just intuitively, he loved to just tune in with the English language to find just the right phrase, just the right expression to convey these deep, cosmic, metaphysical perceptions that he was putting into words that were really beyond words. But that's how he was training her as well. And so in this another passage from one of the letters, he speaks of this. He was answering a letter she had written to him and says, yes, it seems I have been long, long away from Encinitas, hidden in the fastness in the castle of my silence, incessant writing and divine contemplation. Many times I see you and a few other true ones in God's ubiquitousness, all pervading light. And then he said, I have learned a lot of words lately, as I never heeded the much neglected dictionary hunting until now. So I am trying some words on you as they emerge from my pen. Some words I've explained to save you the tedium of consulting a lexicon, or to prevent you from letting them pass by as if you knew what they mean. And he concluded and said, always use a dictionary for correct, exact meanings. So you see how from the very beginning, how carefully, how lovingly, how even humorously he was preparing her. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the chapter 4, Lord Krishna, speaking to his great disciple Arjuna, he says, O Arjuna, many births have been experienced by me and by thee. I am acquainted with them all, but thou rememberest them not. And Mrinalini Mata confided one time that Gorgey said similar thing to her. Paraphrasing the Gita, he looked at her and said, thou and I have been together many times. I remember them all, but thou dost not. And she looked back at him and said, but Master, that's not fair. I want to remember them too. And so sweetly he reached over and touched her head in blessing, and he said, someday I'll tell you. In a letter that he wrote to Rajarsi Janakananda, his great disciple, shortly after she began that editorial work, Gorgey wrote about Mrinalini Mata, "She was destined for this work. God showed it to me when I first saw her spirit." In other words, as she walked into that temple and he was standing up on the platform talking, he said he saw the role that she was to play. In speaking about her life, it wouldn't be complete without also touching on the beautiful, beautiful relationship she had with our third president, Sri Dayamata. There was, in addition to her relationship with the Guru, with Master, that friendship shared by Mrinalini Mata and Dayamata was just the highest, the purest expression you could ever hope to see of real divine friendship. Friendship between two souls, and in this case, two highly advanced souls. Perhaps you've had a glimpse of that in the book that we've just brought out before Convocation, Mrinalini Mata's telling of her stories of visiting the saints of India with Sri Dayamata. You get a glimpse of just, number one, the utter reverence that she had for Ma as Gorgey's representative, but also that sweet relationship of kindred souls united in the consciousness of their 100% dedication to Master. As Swami Ishwarananda was saying, she accompanied Ma on 3 of her trips to India and 3 other trips that Mrinalini Ma made on her own. She had such great love for YSS, for India, such reverence for India. And especially in these last years when she wasn't able to go personally, she loved so much when Brother Vishwananda or one of his assistants or together they would put together a slideshow or a video or report for her of what was going on in YSS. And there was nothing that she enjoyed more. She would get so thrilled, so excited. So I especially wanted to mention that because many of the Yogoda Satsanga devotees are tuning in, watching us tonight. They look to her, they revere her also as their spiritual mother. So know how deeply she had you all ensconced in her heart. Among her personal qualities, the first ones that come to my mind are, first of all, purity. Purity of character, purity of perception, purity of discrimination, purity of her devotion to God and Guru. Even that purity came through physically in her voice. You know, you listen to some of those recordings. I remember the first one I heard was that recording of hers from the 1975 Convocation, The Guru, Messenger of Truth. And it just floored me that this sounds like an angel talking. It was that purity of her being that was coming through. And secondly, I would say wisdom and discrimination. The lotus flower after which Georgie gave her that name, Mrinalini Mata, when he bestowed on her the final vows of sannyas in 1947, after she'd only been in the ashram for about a year, gave her that name of Mrinalini, meaning the lotus flower, and how that's a symbol of has its roots in the mud, but it unfolds that divine beauty in the clear, pure sunlight. So that wisdom and discrimination, and just one symbolic story that, again, this is one that she would never have spoken of out of her own humility. But you may recall that beautiful story that she tells. It was on that recording, actually, that I just mentioned, The Guru, Messenger of Truth, about the time in Encinitas when Gorgey had her and a number of the other young disciples in Encinitas at that time. He had them out on the lawn overlooking the ocean in Encinitas and was speaking to them, giving them some encouragement. And then his mind or his gaze became fixed out on the horizon, and they saw him watching, followed his eyes as coming closer and closer, and then looking at each one of them, and then just very withdrawn, very interiorized, just pranamed. And afterwards he said, Sri Yukteswarji has just come. I saw him as a great ball of light out on the horizon, and he drew closer and closer, and he passed through each one of you, blessing you. And then he turned to Mrinalini Mata and said, he passed through each one of you, blessing you. He passed through each one of you, blessing you, and then he came and stood by you. That pleased me so much. You know, the Jnana Avatar, the incarnation of wisdom, very symbolic. And then her down-to-earth practicality. There was never an ounce of pretension with Mrinalini Ma. She loved to laugh, she loved to cook, she loved, as I said, to clean. Her cooking was out of this world, literally. One time, Guruji told her after she had prepared a very wonderful curry for some guests that he had at the Hermitage, he told her, when you get to the astral world, you're going to cook a banquet for Sri Yukteswar. He will love your cooking. And lastly, her quality of dedication and hard work. You know, for decades, this entire organization worldwide was carried on principally by Dayamata, Anandamata, and Mrinalini Mata. Tremendous burden they shouldered all those decades. She related this story about the quality of attunement, all-important quality of attunement with the Guru. And that, I think, is really one of her legacies to all of us, that not only the way that she's explained it, the way she's taught us all, the methods of forming that inner relationship, that inner attunement with the Guru, despite the fact that he hasn't been in form all these years. She said one time, toward the end of Master's life, he said to her, they were sitting quietly together, he said to her, all these years you have had this mountain of protection with you, meaning the physical presence of the Guru. And then he said, you must be so in tune that when I am gone, you won't feel any difference. And Mrinalini Ma said, with tears in her eyes, she said, Master, when you go, please take me with you. And then immediately she got very embarrassed and said, you know, what a presumptuous thing to say to the Guru, you know. But she said, I meant it with all my heart. And he was so sweet. I was sitting on the floor at his feet, and he looked at me and he said, I could. I have the power to do so. But then who would carry on my work? And he said the same thing more or less to Dayamata and several of the other ones. And then on another occasion, he said to her, someday, when you have gray hair and false teeth and wear glasses, I will look down and say, all right, you can come now. Well, as far as I know, she didn't have false teeth, but, you know, Master loved to paint these word pictures. But obviously, he was foreseeing the long, long life of dedication and spiritual leadership, dedicated service. Up until the very last weeks of her life, she was working with heart and soul to fulfill that assignment that he had given her so many years ago. The lessons will be your life's work. And really, it was a superhuman effort. There's no other way to describe it. With such, the body was weakening, the body was obviously in its last days, but for that last year or so, just with incredible willpower, endurance, stamina, determination, and of course, love to finish what Master had asked of her. It was an amazing conclusion to a supremely victorious life. Interesting, one of the very last lessons that she worked on was a very beautiful one called The Relation of Karma to Health and Prosperity. In my notes, it says this was on July 16th, just 3 weeks ago. And in that lesson, it has these words of Master. He says, sometimes great souls suffer ill health and poverty because of their efforts to free their fellow men from the clutches of disease and want. They give their bodies as a place for others' tendency seeds to momentarily sprout and then be destroyed. They sacrifice their bodies and possessions and devote their minds solely to the task of helping others escape the fruits of their past errors. Great souls do this of their own free will. They are compelled, neither by karma nor by God, to make this sacrifice. After she reviewed that passage, she said, Master told us once that when his own body at the end of his life was undergoing such physical suffering on behalf of the many, many disciples that he was helping metaphysically by taking that onto his own body. And he said that Sri Yukteswar had told him many years earlier, you're taking on too much. Your body won't be able to handle it. And Master said, Gorgey, I don't want to hear about it. And in his compassion just kept right on. And so she was just pointing out that his example of that great compassion of taking on the karma of others. And I said to her, yes, Mrinalini Ma, and how tremendously Master was helped by his great disciples who aided in taking some of that karma on their own forms. Jnanamata, Dayamata, you, Mrinalini Mata, and others. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, yes. And she said, when I was made president, I didn't realize how much it would be. But Master had told me many years ago that my body would suffer in the latter part of my life. And then I reminded her what she had told us, how Master had said to her when she was just a young disciple, someday you will have many, many to train. And I told her how grateful all of us were for everything she had done for us, both outwardly and inwardly. And so humbly, so sweetly, she replied, I hope I did enough. Master once said to her privately, do you know why you suffered so much from ill health when you were a child? It is because in your past life you took on the karma of others. And she also wrote this privately. She said that one morning Master greeted me and blessed me, and he said, I have taken all your karma. Do you know what that means? And she said she wanted to hear what that means from Master's own lips, but he would say no more. Well, clearly what it means is the Guru had taken from her soul, from her spirit, all the residue of her past incarnations of karma, and therefore everything that she endured, everything that she suffered through was all for the benefit of Master's work and for all of us. At another point during that visit, this was just 2 weeks before her passing, about the new edition of the lessons, and she said, we have to keep up the momentum, meaning now they're finished, get them out to the world. And as I mentioned last night, a few months before that, she had specially urged, she specially requested that this convocation would be the one that we make that announcement that the lessons are coming. For all of you, old lesson students, new lesson students, everybody will be the recipient of those when we get them next year, probably. Disclaimer. But then after she said that, I asked her, I said, Mrinalini Ma, are you at peace about the lessons? And she said, oh yes, I feel wonderful. Meaning wonderful that at last she had achieved the completion of that life's work that Master had given to her. And then after a period of silence, almost speaking as if she was speaking to herself, she said so softly, For so many years, I thought it was impossible. For so many years, it seemed impossible. Now it is done. And there was such an immense peace and relief in her voice and in her face. You can't imagine. A few days later, she began to withdraw from outer consciousness. I had the blessing of visiting her again on July 27th, 1 week before her passing. And I tell you, as I walked into that room where she was quietly resting, not talking, breathing slowly and calmly, eyes closed but obviously uplifted here to the Christ Center, there was such a tangible aura and this high vibration in the room, the high state of consciousness in which she was dwelling. You really felt as if a portal, a window had just opened up and it was just streaming down from that heavenly realm. Others who came into the room felt the same thing. The vibrations were so just divinely beautiful. And you felt that, I felt that this isn't just astral beauty of light and color and so on, which is marvelous in itself. But it was even much more high, much more refined, much almost you felt like from that borderland where Sri Yukteswarji tells us that he dwells now on the borderland between the causal and the astral, in the astral heaven of Hiranyaloka. And I remembered once a comment she had made many years before this was to an Indian devotee, Sri Chauvin Roy, who at the time was the General Secretary of YSS, who had been here at the Mother Center for some time, one of his periodic visits. And when he was leaving that time, this was back in the 1980s, Mrinalini Mata and Uma Mata did him the honor of accompanying him to the airport and see him off. A few of us monks were also there. And while waiting for the plane to depart, Sri Roy took the opportunity to ask her all sorts of questions about the teachings and different aspects of Master's philosophy and so on. It was sort of a last-minute satsang before he left. And at one point, I remember him asking about future incarnations and whether she, Mrinalini Mata, and Uma Mata would come back in India. And I remember just with the sweetest, gentle little laugh, she said, well, next time some of us are going to be on Hiranyaloka. So during those last days, I think maybe she was getting a glimpse. A few days later, when I visited her again, this was just 2 days before her passing. And this time, stepping into the room, it was a completely different feeling. The beauty and the joy that was from the previous visit. This time, it was just this sense of immense power. I almost felt like taking a step backward out of the room. And the thought came into my mind that what was going on there, this divinely powerful soul, was just shredding, just incinerating every last vestige of the karma she had voluntarily taken on. It was so powerful. So it was almost even frightening in a little way, not in a bad sense, but in the sense of that awe and humility that you feel in the presence of a manifest divine being. The last time I spoke with her outwardly, she talked a little bit about how much all of you, Gorgey's family, Master's devotees in the worldwide spiritual family, how much you have meant to her. And almost as though she was doing one last mental review, one last introspection as she taught us to do every day, she was reviewing over in her mind and she said, but I didn't visit the temples enough. Meaning she felt she had done more, she should have done more in the way of satsanga and meeting with Master's devotees in the SRF temples and centers. And I said, Mrinalini Ma, your recordings that have been shared with them all over the world have taken care of that. You have had satsang with them in that way, through those beautiful recorded audio and video talks, and most of all, those wonderful visits that you made to Convocation since you became president. And all the temples and all the centers were there, so you did fulfill that responsibility. That's enough. And then she said, how much I love them all. How much I love them all, meaning all of you. She said, I wish I could go to Convocation this year and share that love with all of them. I want them all to feel Master's love the way I have felt it. Her passing finally came on August 3rd, a little before 11 p.m. at night. Later, as we monks and nuns who were there reverently showered rose petals on that inert form. And again, there was such a great, great peace, a great high vibration, divine vibration in that room. That was the last time that I saw that mortal form. But knowing that the great spirit it had housed had truly gone on to omnipresent freedom and bliss. We want to conclude this portion of the service by letting Mrinalini Mata herself address each one of you not one last time. You'll be hearing her as long as you have your mortal ears attuned. But these are some words of hers from a recording that was made in one of her satsangas in India that we felt was a fitting coda to this day of tribute, this day of honoring her life and her message and her legacy of love and wisdom to all of you.
The divine expressed through that form of Paramahansa Yogananda in this life, and through his grace, by going to his feet, by giving him that faith that you have the courage and the determination to take up the sadhana that he gave without doubt, without hesitation, but with full resolve, determination, and divine love. You will see that through that blessing that he has given, through that channel which he is, that you are looking and that you are flowing right through him to God. Study Gurudev's teachings. There is nothing that this chela could say that has not already been said in a much more beautiful and perfect way by Gurudev. Sometimes teachers, divine ones in this world, give very little externally, but Gurudev has given us such a volume of wisdom and God love in his lessons and in his books. And if every day you read these thoughts, not just read them but meditate upon them, make them a part of your life, make them a part of your feeling, make them a part of every atom of your being. Let him speak to you these words, and then above all, dear ones, meditate as he has taught you. The Hamsa technique, practice of communion with God through Om, and the practice of Kriya Yoga. You will find that in this sadhana that he has given, nothing in your life will be lacking. In the way of spiritual necessity, it will make you just fly like a shooting star to God. In your life, let that spiritual light be kindled by the guidance and the God love and the wisdom of Guru, as he has placed it now in your heart and in your keeping. Follow this sadhana of Gurudev. Keep his divine life and example ever before you. Follow his love, follow his sadhana, the wisdom, the teachings, the guidance he has given. And then fill your heart. Draw from him his divine craving. Draw from him. Take that from him and make it your own. I remember how Gurudev spoke to us. He said, I want to just gather you all from this garden of God in this world. Each one is a blossom. I want your life to unfold in a perfect blossom, and I want to gather you all as a fragrant bouquet and to lay you at the feet of God. dear ones, in this divine exchange of love, of oneness in God and Guru. We have come, we have been with you, and these physical forms depart, but there will never be any separation of the souls, of this divine communion and oneness that we know in them. God bless you all. God love you all.
Sister Preeti, would you kindly conduct the rose ceremony and the astral ascension?
At the call of the Heavenly Father, our beloved Mrinalini Mata silently closed the door on this mortal life and entered into the kingdom of light, where there is no disease, pain, nor suffering, no disappointments and frustrations mixed with pleasures. Rather, it is a glorious life of splendid beauty, freedom, and joy. Let us not hold her back, but send her our thoughts of love. Mrinalini Mata, goodwill, goodwill, goodwill. May thy soul be one with God, our Father, Mother, Friend. We offer unto thee our bouquet of love, goodwill, and lasting friendship. We will now have the flower ceremony, Brother Achalananda. Mrinalini Mata, the white rose represents life in God, the purity of thy soul, and all thy good actions. Concentrate on this red rose. Let us permeate it with our love, goodwill, and friendship, which we offer to our dear Mrinalini Mata. Mrinalini Mata, this red rose embodies our love, goodwill, and friendship, which we offer to you. Love, goodwill, and friendship forever. We will now have the fire ceremony. Swami Smaranananda, please light the fire. The fire represents the soul of the departed, which, free from limitations of the physical form, is finding its greater existence in spirit. please meditate and pray for the soul of our beloved Mrinalini Mata as I read the Astral Ascension Prayer given to us by Paramahansa Yogananda ji. O Heavenly Father, we give this body into the altar fire of immortality. Make it immortal. The ashes of this soul's mortal garment have gathered around thy marching feet of omnipresence and become immortal. As the body dust commingles with the dust of thy feet, the soul fugitive from the bodily cage merges into thy spirit. Let it rest in thy bosom, diademed in thy heart. The body has retired from the stage of material life, and the soul has gone behind the scenes into our astral home until thou requirest it to go out to play again. It hides behind the scenes to change its costume of flesh and to take a pension after its strenuous role in the drama of this life. The body was lumped into a clod out of the elemental dust of eternity. It has repented of its earthly follies and has been cast into the purifying flames of immortality, to be reformed into sacred milk-white ashes. Its dust is scattered again, that the body may become infinite once more. Delusion condensed infinity into the finite body, and now, transformed into ashes, the body is released into the infinite kingdom. The earth elements in the body become all matter. The droplet of body water becomes the many seas. The bodily spark becomes the cosmic flame. The mortal breath becomes the cosmic breath. The body-caged sky becomes the endless heavens. The hands become thy mighty hands. The feet become thy sacred feet. The brain becomes thine infinite brain. The little mind becomes thy universal mind. The scanty will becomes thine almighty will. The wisp of feeling becomes the cosmic volume of feeling. The human love becomes thy flawless love. The soul becomes thine omniscient spirit. May the wave of this being, having come out of the sea bosom of thy being, rest again in thine oceanic bliss, until thou permittest it to play once more about the surface of thy sea life. Having long played in the storm of delusion and desires, the soul wave has returned to thy sea bosom to be renewed with thy wisdom and cosmic life. Like a fragrant flower, the mortal body has blossomed and faded. May the withered petals of this life revive into thy lotus of immortality. Let us now chant.
Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai. Jai 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 Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai.
as our souls bathe in the ever-expanding peace and joy and divine love that God and our great gurus have showered on us this evening, as we have paid tribute to our beloved Mrinalini Mata, I'd like to close with this benediction. If we would close our eyes, absorb our consciousness within. May this occasion remind us of our true nature, for we are not these physical forms. We are not bodies. Rather, we are immortal, blissful souls made in the image of God. From Him we have come, and back to Him we will one day all go again. Our beloved Mrinalini Mata has been released from all physical limitations and is free once more in God. Remember, she can receive and will benefit from our loving thoughts. So let us send her our continued goodwill, friendship, and love divine. Now, may the blessings of God ever encompass her and draw each one of us to the realization of our divinity. Let us close by praying, Heavenly Father, Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, and our beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, we bow to you all. From joy we have come, in joy we live, move and have our beings, and one day, in that blessed joy, we shall melt again. Thou art ever new joy. Thou art that joy, born of meditation. Thou art that joy which we seek and live for. Joy, joy, joy. Joy evermore. Joy, joy, joy. Joy evermore. Joy, joy, joy. Joy evermore. May thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion, and may we be able to awaken that love in all hearts. God and Gurus, ever guide and bless us, ever love us, ever protect us, ever surround us in your joy. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace. Amen. If everyone would please remain seated, and we'd ask the monastics to please leave first, the monks and the nuns. You'll be greeted by the monks and the nuns as you depart the California Ballroom, and each and one of you will be given a memento of this occasion. And for those of you who've been watching around the world and the live streaming, you can go to our website and there's a link that will enable you to print this so that you can also have this memento and share in the joy, have this memory of this blessed occasion. Also, there will be no group meditation, no evening meditation here in the California Ballroom this evening. It looks like they're almost ready. God and Guru bless us all.